Welcome back to the Real Joseph Latman. I am Joseph Latman. Happy Tuesday to you guys. Hope you guys are having a good week. I'm excited for today's show. My man Mike Antonace is going to join today. In the back end of the show, we're going to talk about the Browns and what's going on there in camp. But the beginning of the show today, I saw a Charles Stanley clip that I really wanted to react to about temptation. And so my father is going to join along with Mike. And my dad's going to give a parent's perspective about resisting temptation and what a parent should do nowadays to really lead their kids by example. And then Mike's going to give a point of view from a 26-year-old, seeing all the new things and new technology that him and I grew up in. So excited for the show today. So before we get there, I'm going to play the clip by Charles Stanley. And then I'm going to bring them up here and we're going to react to it. So let me play the clip here. Now, this clip here, he talks about, Charles is talking about spiritual warfare and how the devil is always going to be there to tempt you. You're always going to be under spiritual warfare for your whole life, and how it's important to start building up good, how do I want to say it? Almost like building up a strong spirit, because you're always going to have to make tough choices at times. And sometimes choices against our flesh, because our flesh always desires what we want. But sometimes what we want isn't what we need or isn't healthy for us. And so it's very important to build up that strong spirit, strong discernment, and just staying with the word, how important it is to have a good prayer life, how important it is to, you know, constantly just putting on Jesus every day, really. And that's really helped me in my journey with anxiety, because we think of temptation a lot of different ways. A lot of times think of temptation as the opposite sex, but oftentimes it can be the temptation to worry, even the temptation to fear something, the temptation to allow the anxiety to overwhelm you. It's temptation goes in many different ways. Temptation to overspend on things we know we shouldn't buy that aren't good for us. We put ourselves in a financial jam. That's a lot. There's so much temptation nowadays out there in the world with the technology we have, the advertisement everywhere. We're just constant, and the pressure too society puts on us really feeds into to the temptation, because we feel like if we don't have something, we don't do something, that we're not good enough. And that, we talk about all the time in the show, that how pressure really leads people to kind of become a not an authentic version of themselves, which in turn causes a lot of chaos and stress on the inside and anxiety, because you're kind of living a fake version of yourself. And so this clip here is very important, I think, especially for nowadays. And so I'm going to go ahead and play this clip, and then we'll bring the guys up here to react to it. 1 second.
The world system in which we live, look at it, what a mess it's in. The devil, for example, and the flesh, that tendency within you that wants to do wrong at times in your life, it's there. It's going to be there until you die. And so we have three enemies. So how do we handle these three enemies? Well, Paul talks about resisting the devil, for example. He talks about being filled with the Holy Spirit. And so here's what happens. When that tendency comes to think in the wrong direction, watch this now. Somebody says, I can't help myself. Let me tell you something. The devil can't make a single child of God do anything. He cannot make you. He will lead you. He will guide you, entice you, tempt you, but he can't make you. So to walk in the Spirit means moment by moment, what? Moment by moment, we are doing what? We're listening to the Holy Spirit.
All right. So there's the clip there from Charles. I like what he said there at the end. Moment by moment, we're listening to the Holy Spirit. Now, how do we do that? Well, that's why I bring my two guys up here today. Mike, welcome back to the Real. Dad, good to see you. Welcome back to the Real. Mike, I guess I'll start with you. As a 26-year-old man, also you and I grew up in this tech age, all the newer temptations and stuff like that. Mike, what's your initial reaction to the clip?
Well, yeah, my initial reaction to it and is definitely just kind of outlining that spiritual warfare has been a thing since the fall of mankind, and will continue to be an issue. And even though in our Western world it might not manifest very supernaturally, it will manifest in like worldly things, especially in the Western world where we have more wealth than anywhere else in the world. We have more technology, more access to anything else in the world. We have more access to things that tempt you, alcohol, drugs are becoming more and more socially acceptable. Just a constant influx. I mean, lustful things. I mean, it's a click away anymore. Like within the Western world, we have so much, temptation from, the devil, from the enemy. It really kind of brings up kind of the book of Job, in my opinion, which is one of my favorite books of the Bible. If you don't mind, I'd like to read just a little bit of one chapter because I think it outlines the clip perfectly.
Go right ahead.
Alrighty. So, a little bit of context for this chapter. So, Job has been talking to the prophet Elihu. I probably mispronounced that. About basically his gripe with God. God allows us to go through temptation and trials and tribulation, essentially to test us. And he allowed Job to go through some awful temptation, and it was for the betterment of himself. And finally, God talks to Job after Job has been basically demanding, and I think we've all been in that spot before as spiritual people, and even if you're not spiritual, you might have found yourself, asking why God, why, why is this happening to me? Why me? So in Job 38, the Lord finally speaks to Job, and he says, "Then the Lord spoke to Job out of the storm, and he said, 'Who is this that obscures my plans with words without knowledge? Brace yourself like a man. I will question you, and you shall answer me. Where were you when I laid the earth's foundation? Tell me if you understand. Who marked off its dimensions? Surely you know. Who stretched a measuring line across it? On what were its footings set, or what laid its cornerstones? While the morning stars sang together and all the angels shouted for joy. Who shut up the sea behind doors when it burst forth from the womb, when I made the clouds its garment, and wrapped it in thick darkness, when I fixed limits for it, and set its doors and bars in place, when I said, this is as far as you may come and no further. Here is where your proud waves halt. Have you ever given orders to the morning, or shown the dawn its place, that it might take the earth by the edges and shake the wicked out of it? The earth takes shape like clay under a seal, its features stand out like those of a garment. The wicked are denied their light, and their upraised arm is broken. Have you ever journeyed to the springs of the sea, or walked in the recesses of the depths?'" So basically, what God is saying to Job here, which I think highlights this perfectly, is, hey man, I get you're upset, but you think you know better than me? Telling Job, where were you when all of this stuff happened? Oh, did you make the world? Did you tell the ocean to stop going at a certain place? Did you make space? Have you been to the bottom of the ocean? Have you done that? Have you done any of these things? And it's essentially that, temporary temptation and temporary tribulation is all for the betterment of us. And sometimes it may not seem like it in the moment, but at the end, God is always going to reward us, and God is always going to help us in the end. And even though he lets us go through these things, and sometimes we may not understand it, but that's kind of what God's telling Job is hey, there's going to be some stuff you don't understand. And that's okay. You're just human.
Yeah, and I think it reminds me of my past and my journey, what I've been through, which is a lot of times the temptation. A lot of times people will say, "Why is God tempting me?" Well, God's never tempting you, but God will allow things to test you. It's a test, it's a trial to see how He's trying to show you. It's almost like an examination of you. You know what I mean? To see where you're still weak at. There's been many times my faith has been tested, and He's showed me where I need to be stronger at. And along the way, for instance, to build me up for this podcast, I went through a lot of tests internally to get me ready for this podcast. Because if I would have did it 2 years ago when I first brought it up to you, Mike, I wasn't ready for it. I wouldn't. I wasn't where I needed to be spiritually to do it. And so But even like in my anxiety journey, each test led me to the next thing. He kept elevating, but he always elevates you after each one. You just have to pass the test. And so a lot of people stay stuck. And there's just so much temptation out there now. So many distractions. That's why it's so important to focus on the main thing constantly. You have to really practice spiritual warfare. Put on. It's like Tony Evans said one time, putting on Jesus every single day. We're not perfect. We all can do better in different ways. But when you wake up in the morning and you go to bed at night, what's the first thing you think of? What's your, is your purpose to satisfy the soul, like I've been saying, or is it to satisfy the society? And so, Dad, if I could talk, Dad, what's your, I guess from a parent's point of view, raising a kid nowadays in this society with all the temptations, kind of what do you see with the reaction to the clip as well?
Well, I think from what I see, things that I've done, and what I see other parents out there doing, especially from, not only our household, but when I used to coach in sports, things you would tell me about particular friends. I think a lot of parents, they fall into the temptation of raising their children the way they want. And what I mean by that is not including God in every decision they make for their child. It's like, for instance, where you want your kids perfect in every sense. They got to do everything perfect. They got to have a 5.0 grade average. They got to excel in it. Every boy's got to excel in sports. They got to follow the world model, what the world model says for their child. It's all about accolades, and before you know it, you're pushing your child too hard, and you kind of just lose control. That's not what God would want, and for instance, we've talked about this, but when you were going into high school, we only really considered one school for you, and instead of really seeking God's will, we thought we were, but we really didn't pray about it the way we should have. Saying it was I'm not saying it was a wrong place, and I believe God was in control the whole way. But from my standpoint, my duties as a parent, I didn't do that. When you were playing ball, there was times where, times I'd get on you on the way home. If I didn't feel like you performed the way I thought you should have performed, I'd get on you. That wasn't right. That's me trying to live through you. That's me trying to choose your future or build your future, make your future for you. So I think that's probably, from a parent's standpoint, one of the greatest temptations that's really, I believe, is unnoticed right now, and it's not talked about. And I wish it would be talked about more. And I've learned a lot of this through you and what your battle you've went through. And we've talked about this, just perfection. And we're imperfect people. We're never going to be perfect. So why strive for perfection? The easy thing, the easy way is kind of crazy. It's easy, but it's also very hard because of the world we live in. But it's just to seek God's counsel in every decision you make, with your marriage, with your children. So, I think that we just don't do that. You know what I mean? But I found when we do that, and not just parenting, but making the financial decisions for your household, things just go so much smoother. It almost feels like everything was absolutely perfect when you do that. When you look back on it, you're like, man, worked out absolutely perfect. And then the other thing I would say, from a temptation standpoint, where I'm just going to use myself, where I've struggled, and this, is where somebody makes me angry. You know what I mean? And then it's like my flesh wants to serve vengeance. Right. And it all derives from pride. Case in point, your last day of high school football, what happened. You know what I mean? You probably saved that man's life by stopping me. But that was my flesh, my pride, my flesh, my anger took over. So I think a lot of parents do that when they see, for a man, if he sees someone, or even a woman, someone hurts their spouse or says something bad about their spouse or their children, I mean, that's real temptation because you just want to destroy somebody when they do that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But you can't do that. It takes so much strength to not do it. And, I felt a lot, but, I'll give another example of what does work. For anyone that's working, or so anyone that's watching this, we had a case, we had something a couple years ago, and you're aware of this, that pertained to one of Julia's friends and a parent. And, something was said about your sister, and, the father in me just was, I was ready to go berserk. I mean, and it was eating at me for weeks, and I just could not get it out of my head, the anger. And someone had said to me, have you ever tried praying for this person? And when she said that, it stopped me dead in my tracks, because I didn't really want to feel that way. I knew it was wrong, but I was still succumbing to the temptation. You know what I mean? And so when she said that to me, I just stared at her for a few minutes, and I said, no, I haven't. And it was almost like when she said that, it was a reminder of how I should be trying to live my life. And so at that very moment, the anger started to ease. And then that night, I did pray for that woman, and I'm telling you, it was gone. The anger was gone. And I have seen this person numerous times now, even sat behind this person, directly behind this person at a function.
Yeah.
And, and didn't have any anger, but I turned it over to God. I included God in the decision. I seek God's will. So I think those are two, and there's plenty of temptation, but I think those are two big ones, at least with me. So, but the first one I think is a real issue in society, is forcing your kids to try to live up to all these expectations, and then children, it's terrible. These kids get up to high school, they get out of high school, and they feel like they start doing all these things just to suit other people, and they're not happy, they're not living their life, and then they develop anxiety, or they start hurting themselves, and all these terrible things start to happen. So
they start to second guess themselves, and
yeah, and
I think. Go ahead.
But it's just, if the parent, and all they want to do is please their parents, you know what I mean? Ultimately,
Or
and
other people
around them. But I think if the parents do a good job of setting that foundation and actually teaching their children, number one, set the example of including God in every decision you make. You set that example for the child, and then that child follows that. You still talk to that child about that, but that child still follows that. They start to follow that model, and they may not do it as a teenager, but as they get older, they'll start to do that. They'll remember what was taught to them. So, I mean, that's a big one. And it's really disheartening to see. So
I remember,
Go ahead.
Yeah, I remember a time as a kid too. There was another incident a long time ago where I'm not going to say who, what, or when, or but I'm going to say I remember there was a time though where we were somewhere and there was people liquored up, and it was a New Year's Eve, and someone just was not thinking properly because they were liquored up, Mike, and so they kind of, like, my sister went over to him as a little kid at the time, kind of shoved her out of the way a little bit. And obviously my dad and I are standing right there. You imagine our first reaction was to go berserk and just, this guy's like, I have another New Year's Eve after this. And so, but I remember I looked at you, and you just kind of, like, you knew what was going on. You knew this guy wasn't thinking properly. And you kind of said, you know what? I'm going to let this one, because there was other kids there as well. And you kind of just said, you know what? I'm going to let that one go. It's time to just leave. And so we just made the right choice to leave. Right. And so you didn't, but I think a lot of is what causes temptation all these different ways is ego, your pride, your ego, and you want to control something. You want to, but in that scenario there, though, is kind of like our pride and our ego was kind of like, Man,
Yeah,
we
destroy
want
the, just
to,
kill this.
yeah, let's beat this dude in oblivion.
You know what I mean? But
Yeah, but
it would have made things so much worse. You know what I mean? It
yeah, and
wasn't.
it's like well, it's like too the day you brought up my last football practice in high school. It's in the moment we were thinking in the moment, but as time went on, we look back. It wasn't that guy's fault. It wasn't anybody's
No.
fault. It wasn't the coach's fault. The coach was actually doing. Yeah, he didn't. He was doing the best job he knew. He didn't know. Nobody knew. We didn't know. But
Right.
again, it was like another example where God showed us, like, hey, maybe sometimes you should just sit on your hands and just let it go and let it go to me, and I'll show you the truth of what really is going on. And that
Well, yeah.
happens many. I mean, even like I've learned the stuff I've gone through this year, all the new with going through the program, and just there was times where I'd want to react a certain way to certain incidents or circumstances coming up in the future or in the moment. But it's like God will keep allowing tests to show me, like, no, you don't need to react the same way anymore. Like, this is what the truth of it. I mean, a lot of times just by waiting and just allowing and surrendering, you start to see things for what they really are. But also the pressure that you put on yourself. A lot of times you put the pressure on ourselves starts to dissipate.
Yeah. I agree. I mean, here, that one instance, right. I think the guy was just doing the best he knew how. They didn't know. They didn't know what's going. Hell, your mom and I didn't even really know what was going on. You know that, and
No.
it was very emotional. It was, so things worked out, but you actually had to cool her head. You know what I mean? You had to cool her head. So, it's just not, and it's just not that kind of stuff. It's like you said, it's pride. These guys, you see guys fighting, you see guys shooting each other. You got people get shot. It's pride. I mean, it's the worst. You talk about the 7 deadly sins. It could be the worst. You know what I mean? Because
I would
it
say
causes.
too, like, and Mike, you can comment on this because in our age group, it's really, I mean, it's always been bad, but with the access to anybody nowadays, just the lustful culture we live in, the adulterous culture we live in now. We wonder why our marriages are falling apart because we don't really view our spouse, especially as men. I mean, we struggle with a lot of guys. We know. How do you view your spouse to the value how God wants you to view them? If you're, you just make it, and a lot of it's just due to pride. Our society celebrates living this lifestyle, that it's this correct way to live, going out and sleeping with 20 different people a week, and I mean, it's great. And what's your thoughts on that, Mike?
I couldn't have said it better myself. The culture is definitely like, I can't remember who said it, but it was like anybody born after like '93, they started calling it the me generation, just because like you're so self-focused, you're so inward focused, that you just try to indulge yourself in any way that you can, and that could be through lustful means, it could be through materialism, it could be through prideful things, it could be through even your career, taking an identity through your a career rather than God, taking an identity through other people rather than God. But yeah, I agree.
Dad?
Yeah. Here, one thing I was just thinking. I don't know if it's still on the subject, but I think I like to try to think I've kind of over the years stay focused on what lies ahead. You know what I mean, and focusing on that and what not the mistakes you make in the past. But
right.
One thing I've learned is it takes, the more you can do that, the more you can refrain, the more you can swallow your pride, the more you can just pause, like you said, sit on your hands for a minute and say, here, it sounds cliche, but what would Jesus do? You know what I mean? If he just, and the more you can do that, the more powerful you become. And it starts to become, the more you do that, it almost seems like it starts to become easier, because it's almost like you start to, even though that's what you should do, you should be in prayer, you should be reading, but the more you do that, it's almost like you retrain your mind. You train to automatically go to that source that helps guide you and to make the right decisions. That's the
you
only way to
start
do
seeing
it.
it through that lens. That's kind of what I was getting at earlier.
Yeah, you start to live your life more and more that way, to where, here, like, if you take me now at 45, especially a lot of people that, Mike, you've known me, what, 8 years now?
Yeah.
How long you know me? I mean, I'm probably a lot more mellowed out than I used to be. And then even further back than people that know me from 20 years ago or 30 years ago, it was, at one point, I was so full of pride. I've told you, Joseph, at one point, when I was 18, 19 years old, if I would continue on that path, I'd be dead or in prison. And, but God, things happen in my life, where God humbled me, you know what I mean? And, so thank gosh he did. And, but, and then you make mistakes, you continue to make mistakes as you go on. But as I've gotten older, I'm still far from perfect, still doing a lot. You saw me last night. Something had me pretty upset, you know what I mean? And it was very difficult to deal. I was angry all through the middle of the night. I was waking up in the middle of the night thinking about something, angry about, I felt like I was done. Someone did me wrong. And I was still mad about it this morning. And I just was having a hard time letting go. And I knew I shouldn't feel that way, but I was just struggling to let go of it. And, as the day went on, I did. But, the more you go on, it's just, I think it's easy. That same case 20 years ago, I would have handled it a lot differently. This time I knew it was wrong, and it was just, getting to that point where I can get rid of it. And so that goes back to the more and more you do it, the more and more you seek God's will, the more and more it becomes easier to do that, as long as you continuously try to live in his will as best as possible. So.
Yeah, I think too, the more you do that, you start to, what I was getting at earlier about it's like you have to really look through the higher lens nowadays, because our world will tell you that all this stuff is okay.
Right.
Going out and living that kind of lifestyle is okay. Going out, hey, you can do a little drugs here, and hey, going out, drinking more than you should have, drinking and driving, that's okay. Hey, we give a pass, and it starts off nice and slow, and then it becomes it's acceptable. We think it's okay. We think it's, and when you look through that worldly lens, you're gonna constantly just keep giving in to things. And you're never gonna grow as a person. You'll constantly just be stuck here. You might get a little far, but it never goes far. It never lasts. It's why it's important to see through. If this was, the higher lens, look through the higher lens, God's heaven lens, God's lens. Because the more you do that, like you said, the more you practice that, the more I've learned for me, from my journey, is the more I look through that lens, I don't really. It's like Jason Whitlock said one time, on his weight loss journey. He goes, I used to drive by Ronald. He goes, I used to go by McDonald's all the time and pull right in that parking lot. He goes, I loved Ronald McDonald. But he goes, once I realized my gluttony, he said, and he goes, I realized how this isn't healthy for me. The more you start looking through that lens and practicing more healthy habits, eating better, he goes, when I drive by now, I don't even think of Ronald McDonald. He goes, I used to love Ronald, but not anymore. It's the same thing. It's like you don't get the cravings. You don't get the desire to, or even to respond a certain way, like we're worrying. Like you've seen that with me, how certain instances I used to just go into full panic or anxiety mode, where now a lot of things I don't respond that way anymore. I just surrender.
Right.
And I just start looking to God, because really my faith has grown.
And that's what you just said is the key, just surrendering. Because when you surrender, you say, I can't do any of this on my own. If I try to do it on my own, I'm going to screw it up. That's what we do, and then the world tells us that little saying you hear so often now, do you. That's the worst thing in the world. No, you don't do you. You do what the Lord wants you to do. Do you.
Really it's isolating yourself too, which is not healthy.
Just do you. In other words, just anarchy, living free will, and you know what I mean? No, that's crazy. It sounds great, but it's really a bad message. So if I did me, I'd be in prison. You know what I mean?
Yeah, if I
I
did
know I
me,
would
I
be.
would be sitting here. If I did me, I
Right.
wouldn't be sitting here. I wouldn't be. I'd be very angry still. And it's kind of like you said too. Like when you get angry, it's like with that incident my last day. If I'd have kept that, I've been looking like how you responded last night. You start looking at people the wrong way, and you start to get a false. It's not
Right.
really reality,
Yeah.
And a lot of times
Yeah.
you can ruin relationships with that. You can ruin, and then but it helps you with that. Even when you start looking through that higher lens, you understand. Okay, you know what? Let me look for the be more. You have more grace upon yourself and other people. And you're kind of like, hey, you know what? Let me ask this person. Maybe we'll talk it out one day, and let's call and talk like men or whatever adults. And a lot of times you find the truth, and this person's not didn't really have a bad intent or whatever it is, but they just or like my case, they just didn't know. They didn't know, and so and you
Well,
start to realize like when we found out with me, just how much of a lack of knowledge there is about anxiety in our society, and how our
no,
first line
zero.
response is terrible.
And if it wasn't for you, I'd be just as ignorant as everyone else. You know what I mean? Even though I dealt with it in the past,
Mm.
and it just about everybody has. But I mean, it's obviously I see it in a whole different scope because of you, and being a part of that, um, and everything you've taught Mom and I. So,
Mm.
um, but one thing you just said is having grace not only yourself but other people. That's another temptation. Like, we talked about this where you put these false expectations on people. You want them to be perfect. You know what I mean? You you want to have the right to not be perfect, but you want everyone else to be perfect and to do everything
Mm.
right and to treat you a certain way and treat everybody right. And then if they don't, you want to hold them accountable or you're angry with them. So
You blame it on
that's
them.
right. And that's
Yeah.
another huge issue that goes on in this society. And a lot of people don't realize they're even doing it. Last night, I was doing that. You know what I
Mm.
mean? I was angry. Who I was at. I was mad at someone. And, and I thought about it all day today. And it it's just like you just said a few minutes ago. Again, if you just wait and you're patient, things really aren't what you first initially thought. You know what I
Right.
mean? That's
Mm.
just that anger, because you can't, when that anger comes in you just can't think clearly. You can't rationalize things.
It gives you
And so,
disoriented information.
right, absolutely.
Mm.
And it's happened to me a lot of times. So, um, it's that's a man, that's a big one, especially with men.
Yeah.
Men's pride. So
Mike, I want to
probably
ask
it's
you
a devastating thing.
Mike, I want to ask you, in your anxiety journey, which we've talked about in the show in the last since what about March or April, I believe, since you really started seeking help.
Yeah.
What's kind of helped you because you've changed a lot of ways too. What's kind of helped you with the temptation to, for anybody out there listening, what's helped you in the last couple months, really kind of resisting your old habits of the temptation to worry or to, a lot of stuff we've talked about today. What's helped you kind of have more grace on yourself?
Well, that's just it. Having more grace with myself when I have those, those, excuse me, anxious thoughts. Or,
Mm.
another thing that I'll do is, I'll, like you do, I'll remind myself how far I've come, and I'll also just tell myself, wait, look how far you've come. Look what God's gotten you through. Look what your family's gotten you through. Like, do you really want to feel that way again? Like, do you really want to
Mm.
feel anxious again? Like, when I ever feel those thoughts coming up and I want to, go down that rabbit hole, the spiral, if you will, just reminding myself how far I've come and not wanting to feel that way again, even though those thoughts and feelings might be tempting, like that usually like pops it out of the old
Mm.
noodle relatively quick.
Yeah, it's hard too because I remember like because I've been where you were, where you're so conditioned to react a certain way for so long, and then once you start to work on new habits and you start to build upon them, it's like conditioning, it's practice, it's repetition. You have to constantly And that's why it's good to write down things to remind you. Like you just said, you write down how far you came. You write down your affirmations. You write down what your goals are. You look at your goals daily. You look at your evidence. You know, your doctor told you you're healthy, Mike. You're okay, right? And you and I have been there as hypochondria. And Dad, you went through that hypochondria battle when you were in your 20s. And so, you know, it's a conditioning thing, and you just kind of get to the point where you're kind of like, you know what? It's like I said earlier. It's like the fear is up here right now, but then the more you condition, the more then it starts to go like this, and then this is kind of gone. You know, and it's really with any temptation in life, any worry or whatever, you know, whatever it is, craving.
Right.
So, but all right, well, you guys else you want to add here, Dad? Before Mike and I, well, we're gonna go to commercial break, and then we're gonna come back and talk about the Browns. You guys else you want to add here? Maybe as like a, let me ask you, maybe as like as a parent raising two kids, raised two kids, you have a daughter going into high school, with all the temptation with the technology out there, there's a lot of influence now, and everybody wants to be an influencer nowadays. It's a very kind of, you know, watered down thing to be nowadays. And so I guess kind of what as an advice to a parent out there, kind of how do you guide a child maybe through all this and show them how to, you know, make proper choices with things, and kind of also balance not letting them. Sometimes you have to let them experience things too.
Well, I'd say first and foremost, and what we didn't always do, and I think we've done a better job with your sister, because we learn, is listen to your children. Let them have a voice. You know, I didn't. We've had those discussions. I didn't really have a voice growing up. You know what I mean? And because of that, it's kind of I've had issues my adult life and my work life, home life. You know, and that's something I've battled with, and I really didn't truly realize it. Gosh, probably till like 3-4 months ago. I was just sitting in the living room one night, your mom and I, and something just popped in my head. And it was an old memory from when I was probably like 4 years old. But the memory was so real, I felt like I was in that moment. The feeling I had at that time, you know, when my dad was yelling at us. So I think what happens is, you know, the intent's good by the parent, but you know, they want to no, you're not doing that, or they just shut their kid down. But it's not good. Everybody wants to be heard. Everybody deserves to be heard. You can guide your child in the right direction, and you can discipline them, but at the same time, and teach them respect, but at the same time, let them have a voice. You know what I mean? Let them be a child, but by letting someone have a voice, you show them that they have value. They're a very important person. They're just as important as everybody else. You know, they're a perfect creation of God. So I think that's what I see it all the time. And you see it as you see adults do it to other adults. They just won't let them have a voice, but it's just terrible when it happens to a child, because it should never happen. And then what happens is they start to react when they get in their teens, and then it carries into their adult life. So from my own, you know, speaking for myself, from my own mistakes, and what I lived through and realized as I've gotten older, just listen to your child. Let them have a voice. Don't force them to do things. Don't force them into certain sports, or, you know, if it's you got a daughter and she wants to get into gymnastics or cheer or dance or whatever it may be, whatever. You know, encourage them. Don't force them to do things. Encourage them, and you know, and if it's something you may not, you know, here with your daughter. I mean, I remember when Julia was playing soccer when she was younger. I'm not a soccer fan. Okay. I'm going to be frank about it. I'm not a soccer fan. Okay. Right. But when she was playing, that's what she wanted to do. You know what I mean? Right. And so I was right there laughing my head off, watching her play. You know what I mean? And if she and she made that decision to stop playing again. It wasn't that I didn't show interest. Mom and I were at you know, you were still also playing ball at the time. So Mom and I would switch and go back and forth, but I was cheering her on. You know what I mean? So, and if she was still, she made that decision to stop playing, but if she was still playing, I'd be right behind her. And so, you just, how could you not be like that with your kids? You know, it's easy. It seems like it's easier to happen with your first child. And I think any parent that has more than one child will say that they learn after the first child, and hopefully they learn. And you're going to make mistakes, but you know, for the mistakes that I've made, if any parent's watching, just listen to your child. Put the device down. You know, when they're talking, just listen to them. You know what I mean? They're going to grow up.
Yeah,
at
and
one point
I would say
they're going to be
too,
gone.
how can I would say too, like what we learned and what I see just from all the people I talk to now doing what I do now, helping people with anxieties. How can I help guide this person to find what the will of God is for them? That's really what it is. You know what I mean? Finding what God's will is for them. I think a lot of parents try to push their kids in the ways they went. You know, they got to go through the same things I went through. They got to, but God's will for that child, for that person, is probably different than their parents. And actually, their will might be to help their parents in some way, just through the process.
Well, yeah.
How can I show them to see that lens to find what God's will is for them? How can I help them hear God, help them listen to God, and show them how to listen? You know what I mean? And to tap into that.
Well, it's just living that life. You know, the greatest way to lead is by example, and trying to live that life the best you can, and even just speaking to them. You know, I remember in December when your sister was deciding which high school she wanted to go to. You know, you remember that night we were in the living room, and you and I at the moment wanted her to go to one place, and we thought that was the best place, and she had a different place in mind. And I remember she went upstairs, and she may have been a little upset, and I thought about it, so I went upstairs, and we got down our hands and knees and we prayed. And I told her, I said, let's just pray about it. You pray about it. We'll pray. We're going to pray together right now. And then you continue to pray. I said, and then the Lord will reveal it to you. And, and he did, you know what I mean? And so that was an instance where your sister, we always taught you that, but your sister learn something from that, you know what I mean? And and I've seen ever since this, she includes God more in decisions she makes. If you just look at
sorry, go ahead.
Well, you just look at the testimony that she gave in front of the congregation before she got baptized Sunday. I mean, it was awesome. I mean, it was just like to hear your daughter say that. It was, it was one of the greatest days of my life, so, I'm sure your mom feels the same way too, but, it's just, you feel like you've been a good steward of this child that God has blessed you with, because at the end of the day, I don't belong to my mom. I belong to the Lord, you know what I mean? And you guys belong to the Lord. We're just, your mom and I are stewards of you and your sister, and it's our job as parents is to raise you up the best we can, the way the Lord would want us to. So, and that's the only way we can do that is through him, his guidance, and putting him first. And we don't always do that, but I feel like I got two pretty good kids.
Yeah. Well, you got a third child up here too, Mike. Your stepson.
Oh yeah, I take them all. Mike, they all know I love them. Mike, Corey, Jeremy.
You've had to really help Mike out a lot, right, Mike? He's had to really straighten you out a lot of times.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, here, Mike's helped me many times.
Right.
Mike makes me laugh. Everyone knows I love to laugh. Mike makes me laugh, and I try to give him good advice and just be a mentor for him. If you say that, I don't know if I am, but
of course. I've told you that.
Oh, I know, but I don't think that way about myself, Mike. You know that. And
Yeah.
but you help me and you've helped my family, and so it goes both ways. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So it's just that's what else can you ask for in life? To have
Right.
friendships. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
there's nothing more important, nothing more
No,
gratifying on this earth.
no, definitely. And,
Yeah.
like, we said a mouthful there at that time. That was really good. You guys are watching, leave a comment below. We'd love to hear your feedback. And the three of us would always love to help you guys as well. Yeah, you got anything else out of here for you let you go, Dad? For Mike and I go. Michael K. Cabot comes in the form.
Here, it's Brownstown. It's time. You know what I mean? Even though it's a Hall of Fame game,
They're suiting up. They're suiting up.
This the excitement. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
Feel it.
it's about to get on. So it's going to be a great season. I'm looking forward to a lot of the shows, the post shows, and
we're gonna have some fun this year. So we got a lot of ideas too. We're gonna be doing. So stay tuned.
So Mike, you have
right,
to come over and watch some games.
Of course, I will. I'll be drinking a bunch of beer to try and calm my nerves, all that good stuff.
What are you doing? You got to work Thursday?
No, I'm off.
Well, maybe one way or the other, we'll get together and watch the game. We'll have a party for the Hall of Fame game.
Yeah, the Hall of Fame game.
Yeah.
All right.
See Dorian Thompson in all of his glory.
We almost got to, because I don't know if the Browns have ever played a Hall of Fame game in my lifetime.
So, no, they have in your lifetime. It was back in the 80s, though.
Yeah, I'm not going to remember that. I remember the 80s teams, and I'm not going to remember Hall of Fame game. So,
yeah,
we got to.
Yeah, you guys will see Mike and I. We'll go live Thursday night on maybe Instagram or something, and we'll see what's going on. But,
I do a halftime. Hey, real quick, isn't it
how's
funny?
DTR doing?
Just real quick on the on the Hall of Fame game. I just think it's funny that we're going to see our 4th round quarterback from UCLA play against the 2nd overall pick from 2 years ago. I just think that's funny as hell, because Zach Wilson's just out there throwing balls to, like, I don't know, Denzel Mims' ghost or whoever the hell is out there.
I'll save that thought, Mike. When we come back, we're gonna get into it. We're gonna do a quick. Go ahead.
They'll probably put Watson out there for at least a series.
Oh no, they already said that.
No, he's not playing.
Did they really? Yeah, Stefanski said that he sees this as preseason game 0 because this is an extra game. Like, we don't play one less. We have the normal amount plus the Hall of Fame game. So he said that he's probably going to get more reps in, like, the Commanders Browns preseason game. And then he sees the Eagles joint practice as the, like, when they're going to play the starters.
Which is like the real preseason game.
Yeah, it's a joint practice because, it's no contact.
You can actually, So,
well, that stinks. I was hoping to get out there so all the perfect people out there could continue to feel more perfect, better about themselves. So,
no, you're going to be seeing Kellen Mond and DTR. Kellen Mond playing the first half, Kevin already said, and then DTR is playing the second.
All right. All
right. Well, thanks for joining.
I'll see you, Mike. Hope I'll see you Thursday, bud.
I hope to see you Thursday as well. Wink, wink.
All right. Later.
Later. All right, guys. Mike and I will be back in 3 minutes. We're going to take a little quick intermission. We'll be back. We're going to do a quick little rapid fire on the Browns real quick. So we'll be back. Stay tuned.
Because people put labels on you, so sometimes people believe them. After a lot of, constantly people saying, "Oh, you're this, you're that," you'll never do this, you'll never be like that, whatever. Sometimes
I think this is important. I wrote this down right here because this is key for people our age, especially somebody like me who's 23, single. Is don't wear the labels the world might say you are. And so people could tell me in my life, some of the things in my personal life, obviously because we're good friends, but certain things maybe I haven't achieved yet because of what happened to me, just because of circumstances. But if I were to keep wearing that label of I don't have X, Y, and Z yet, or if I would go by the world standards and the pressure, and sometimes even your own family, and he even said in the sermon earlier, he said sometimes the wisest thing for you to do, nobody will agree with you, literally nobody, and that could be your own. It could be everybody around you, but as long as you listen to the voice, and you can feel that conviction. Why should you be afraid? Why not? What's there to be? What I mean? What that should give you somewhat of a confidence, and that's hard to do because when everybody around you is telling you what to do, you can start to wear I could have started to wear those labels and started to I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you today though. I can tell you that I'd be in a deep hole. So I guess kind of what we talked about this in our last episode we did too, back I think it was like in October.
Yeah.
About being bold and courageous, and because that's really what it is. I think surrendering, it takes a leap of courage, of faith. And so I guess kind of what are the things that have helped you in your past, or what some words of encouragement people out there, especially our age, watching about, being bold and courageous, and not wearing your past, not wearing the labels and all that.
It's something that's, it's easier said than done, but you definitely have to try to surrender. Surrender it all to God. Giving it to Him, laying at the foot of the cross, and just trusting Him through it all. Because people put labels on you, sometimes people believe them. After a lot of, constantly people saying, "Oh, you're this, you're that," you'll never do this, you'll never be like that, whatever. Sometimes you'll believe them, after hearing it enough, and then at the end of the day, it's just lies. But you have to trust that, Christ is going to set you free, as He said He will. You just got to take the first step and surrender it to Him first before He takes it. Because He's not going to do it forcefully. He's going to do it. He wants you to take the first leap of faith.
It's Brown stuff.
Got my man Michael K. Cabot joining the show now. Mike, I got a couple things. We went a little longer there, but it's okay. So we'll run through this real quick. I guess we'll start here. The Browns yesterday brought in Shelby Harris, I think, for a visit. No official word yet if they're close to a signing. Shelby Harris, 24 solo tackles last year, 2 sacks for Seattle. Really good against the run. I think if they can sign Shelby Harris here, I think that'd be really another bonus to that line. I think he would be a starter probably alongside Dalvin Tomlinson in the middle there. I really like that with Harris, Garrett, Tomlinson, and then obviously Darius Smith. You got Double O off the bench, Alex Wright, the guy we draft, Ika. So what's your thoughts there, Mike? What's the latest there?
So I really like Shelby Harris. It seems like every year the Browns, there's rumors that the Browns might bring in a defensive tackle for training camp. And every year it doesn't happen. It's a huge, great sign that Andrew Berry even brought in Shelby Harris for a visit. Now, like Joseph said, he's more of a run stuffer. He did have 2 sacks, and he had a pretty decent pressure rate. About a 77 PFF grade last year. Shelby Harris would increase the depth of this line immensely, especially in the defensive tackle room, which still scares me. I like the Siaki Ika pick. I really like Dalvin Tomlinson and Maurice Hurst when he's healthy, and that's a big win. He's very productive, but he hasn't been healthy since he played for the Raiders, and he hasn't played for the Raiders in 2 years. So we will have to see where that goes. Obviously, there's another guy floating out there, Mike Antonace, who most recently played for the Carolina Panthers. He was a first-round pick for the, at the time, Redskins, who's more of the interior pass rusher, where Shelby Harris is obviously more of a run stuffer. You can see bringing him in, what they think the need is. They really want to shore up that run stuffing ability. I think they don't really value interior pass rush because they think they got that on the edge, which I would agree with
Yeah.
3 starting caliber pass rushers, 2 of which are star caliber pass rushers in Za'Darius and obviously Miles. So we'll see where that goes. I would say if he's not signed by us by Friday, it's probably not happening because it's really rare that you hear about the visit before the signing. So every day that passes, it is more and more unlikely. I'll say that much. So we'll see where it goes. I would love him on the team, but I don't know if it's going to happen. But it is a big thing that even we look at.
Yeah.
So.
Well, we'll keep an eye on it. Now, I do want to react to this real quick. The other day, this went viral online. Double O, what's Ogba? How do you say his last name?
Agba Okonkwo.
Got into a fight with. There was a fight at camp with James Hudson, and I'll just say Double O went up. It seems like James Hudson blocked him really well in the play. They had some words exchange after the play, and Double O proceeded to slap James Hudson and run away, which I thought was everybody was laughing about how he slapped him and ran away. James Hudson's a big dude. Went to Cincinnati, went right after him, and just decided to clobber him basically when he got up to him. I actually, you know what? I'm gonna play the clip first. I'm gonna give you my take on it, Mike, and then we'll hear yours. So let me pull this up here. 1 second. All right, Mike. So there's the reaction. My initial reaction to it, Mike, I like it. I played football for I can't remember how many years, 7 years. I remember my team that won the national championship. At just 12 years old, we used to have fights all the time in practice just because it gets so competitive. I mean, I remember one of my best friends in life, Dallas Brown Yates. Shout out to Dallas. Dallas was the nose tackle. I was the center. And every day in practice, we were best friends off the field. But during practice, we hated each other. We used to go at each other, cheap shots. We used to there was a couple times Tim and I got into a fight. I mean, I think it's good. I think it's something we haven't actually seen from the Browns practice in a long time, maybe ever. I think it's a sign of just good, good, hard, real competition going on out there. I have no problem with it. I think it was great. I like the guy's reaction at the end of it, clapping and cheering, and it's just part of playing ball.
Exactly, and even coach said, scrums happen, especially when you're nearing. That was on the last day. It was 90 out. They're running, and to my knowledge,
you're tired, you're pissed off, you want to go home.
Right, and to my knowledge, Agba had been just smoking James Hudson the whole day, just smoking him. So tensions were a little high, and then it just happens, and they run sprints after. It is what it is. And Agba has looked very good throughout camp, which is exciting. But yeah, no, I don't mind it. Coach didn't seem to bump, about it. He said there's going to be discipline. There has to be, they ran sprints, and I'm sure James and Agba are going to have to do something extra or what have you. But it is what it is. It's football.
They probably ran sprints, and then you know what happened? The two guys in the locker room, maybe a couple of vets, the quarterback even pulled them aside, and they probably shook hands, and that was it. But I had no problem. Again, it's like me and my buddy Dallas. We used to go to war every day in Pride. And Dallas, you're watching. Shout out to you, brother. But we used to go at it every day, but we made each other better. And guess what? We played against we were middle school team. We played against high school teams that year. There wasn't one nose tackle I played that was better than Dallas. Not one. So every single day I was going against the best one every single day. And he made me better, and I hope to make him better. But yeah, I think competition's great. I think it's good to see the competition level high, to see the energy high, and to really see, like, we've seen some fights in the past that were just kind of like dumb. You know what I mean? They were just kind of like, yeah. But this, I think you're just seeing a different energy with this team. The guys are you just feel like when you watch the practices, when you watch the training camp highlights, you just see more of there's a different vibe with this team. it's a different vibe that we haven't seen in a long time. I think Jim Short's his mentality he's brought to the building is really starting to show, which I like.
Oh
That
yeah,
dog mentality.
absolutely. And communication being better across the board. I'm excited for the DB room. I mean, what's good? I saw on Twitter people were complaining that the offense had a rough day. Well, in the Greenbrier, the defense was having a bunch of rough days, and that's what you want to see. You don't want to see one side of the ball completely dominating the entire time through camp. You want to see some give and you want to see some take. And I think that was great that we've been seeing that. That is that's the concoction for a good football team. And I'm very excited Thursday that we get to see the Browns suit up. I know it's just going to be the young guys and, the four stringers, but, it's just the fact that I'm going to see the Cleveland Browns play a football game. It's going to
I
feel
want to
good
ask
to
you though, real
watch.
quick. I know Camp's been kind of quiet, but when you watch the highlights and we've heard from reporters, it sounds like I'm gonna get Michael K. Cabot's take on this. It was actually the first clip here on this highlights. The Deshaun Watson to Elijah Moore connection is really becoming more and more evident when you watch during the scrimmages, the 7-on-7s. That connection has grown really fast, and so I guess kind of seeing that, what can we really expect from Elijah Moore this year, in your opinion? There's another one right there.
I think Elijah is going to be, the de facto speed option guy. I mean, he's been lining up behind Watson, running like curl and flat routes in a pistol set. I really think he may very well get 800 to 1,000 yards. Very reliable player. He can run any route, fast, good hands. So I really like the connection. And then obviously you still have Murray Cooper. He's going to get his. He's a true wide receiver one. And then I think the other connection that has really been growing a lot is the David Njoku Watson connection. One day at the Greenbrier, David Njoku basically dominated the whole day. And Watson loves his tight ends, and with David Njoku, having a great season last year, I think he's going to follow up with even a better one this year. But yeah, two names to watch for like breakout seasons, if you will, or David and definitely Elijah Moore.
Definitely. And before we get out of here, Mike, I guess kind of we got the Hall of Fame game coming this Thursday night. We've already previewed with my dad, and you brought it up. I guess kind of what are you looking forward to? I'm looking forward to seeing really obviously the rookies. I want to DTR is fun to watch. He's got a big arm talent since college. He can run around. He can scramble. But I'm really curious to see. I want to see how Cedric Tillman looks coming off the injury because he was injured last year. I think that's kind of why he fell to us. I think he would have been a higher pick. I'm curious to see him. I'm curious to see. It might be an important player now. Greg Newsome got dinged up today. Should be fine. But Cameron Mitchell, the corner we drafted, his ex-teammate out of Northwestern. I'm curious to watch guys like him play, see how Siaki looks. So I guess kind of what are you looking forward to in previewing the game Thursday night?
Yeah, I'm really excited to watch Siaki Ika play. I really want to see how he does on the interior, taking double teams, how he actually fits in that role, playing against other people wearing NFL uniforms. The other player I actually am excited to watch is Dalen Baldwin, who actually had some really nice plays during camp, who might be like a fringe guy. He actually, he started.
Made some plays for us against. It was the Baltimore game at Christmas.
The Ravens game. Yeah. He made some plays, and he has been really good during camp, and he could be kind of a fringe guy. So I'm excited to kind of see what he does, and if he keeps making a concerted effort to show that maybe he does deserve a roster spot. But because I do foresee the Browns possibly keeping 7 wide receivers this year. So.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's going to be really interesting to see what that receiver room pans out to be after all the cuts. The final, once the 53-man roster is made. Because you have your obvious Amari Cooper, Elijah Moore, DPJ, Cedric Tillman, David Bell. That's 5, right? Yeah. And so it's curious to see what that 6th and 7th spot's going to be. because it's really wide open. I mean, especially now with Marquise Godwin is out, and I don't know, who knows when he'll be back. He's out.
Something like that can
What's that?
Something like that can take 6 to 7 weeks.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So who knows how long, and so could a guy like could you see like a guy like Anthony Schwartz, does he even have a shot still to make the roster? I mean, or do you
Maybe
see
as a special team kind of done
it. Or do you see them going with Baldwin instead?
But, I mean, we're in a weird spot because Anthony Schwartz gives you another like speed, and I think Dalen Baldwin is very much the DPGA kind of receiver. He's a Michigan product as well. And,
they were teammates
Michigan
together.
Yeah, they were, and Michigan loves those big position, possession
guys.
receivers.
Yeah,
exactly. That's Michigan's whole wide receiver room almost every year. So it's really, even though I like Dalen Baldwin, I like what he does. I feel like with our current wide receiver room, I think as far as possession receivers go, I think we have that in spades. I think Donovan Peoples-Jones has proven himself to be the number one guy on our team for that. I think Cedric Tillman is going to be that. I feel like David Bell can be that, like Jarvis Landry kind of slow slot receiver, possession guy. So outside of
Elijah Moore gives you like a balance of both.
Yeah, Elijah Moore is very versatile. That's why I really like him. But
not only that, it's really only one spot because
on the team to run some sweeps and to maybe run a go route every now and then. I don't know. Is he reliable?
I forgot you're gonna keep Jakeem Grant on the roster for special teams, obviously, because was a Pro Bowler.
Yeah,
so you're gonna keep him on there. So that's really only one spot. And
so
that's really tough. It looked like it was Godwin. Goodwin was a Goodwin or Godwin. It looked like he was gonna keep it. It was his spot. And yeah, it was like it was gonna be Goodwin's spot, but now that he's going through that, I don't know. It's really interesting to see what happens.
And I agree. And if Jakeem Grant, I've already heard that he looks pretty much back, but if he's back with the speed and everything, Anthony Schwartz is cut because Jakeem Grant can give you that, and he can give you that better. So, and he's proven
he's a Pro Bowler.
Well, he's an All-Pro punt returner, and he's got
That's
the
what
speed.
I'm saying. It's valuable.
Right. So if
that's why they say it's a three. You got to have all three facets of the game go well: special teams, offense, and defense.
Right. So if Jakeem Grant's 100% back, then maybe we start talking about a guy like a Dalen Baldwin making the team, or maybe Jalen Darden healthy, and then it's who knows.
Yeah. Well, real quick before we go, it looks like too, what I've observed from the running back room, it's really can be running back by committee outside of Nick Chubb. I think, I heard some people make a point that they really Jerome Ford, Demetri Felton kind of give you what Kareem Hunt was combined. So I think you're going to see I think we're going to go 3 deep at running back. I think we're going to see obviously Chubb, the best running back in the league. But I think after that, I think you're going to see Jerome Ford come in, kind of play that Nick Chubb more power role, and I think you'll see the Felton come in. He's getting some reps in camp with more of the pass catching role.
And very well could be. I think Ford actually can give you that too. I think Demetric very well can make the team as the third running back. I mean, there are still some guys kind of floating out there. I saw a rumor that if the Jets sign Dalvin Cook, that the Browns would be interested in Michael Carter. And if that's the case, I think he would be RB2 immediately because Michael Carter is an excellent pass catching running back. So we'll have to see how that situation shakes out. That's a play it by ear kind of thing, but I do like what Ford gives you long term. I'm not sold on Felton. I haven't been since we drafted him, but if he makes the team, great.
All right, Mike. Well, there's your report from Michael K. Cabot. I think my screen froze again. This always happens when we go through these longer ones.
At the end of the shows, yeah.
It just freezes. But oh well, it is. We're at the end, so what does it matter? But
right.
All right, Michael K. Cabot. I appreciate you for tuning in, everybody. Mike, thanks for coming on today, Mike.
Appreciate you, Cabot. Yeah.
Appreciate you like always, and we'll see you in the next one, brother.
See you in the next one, bro. Later.
Later. All right, you guys. Thanks for tuning in today. Make sure you hit the like, subscribe, and share button. If you enjoy this content, please give a thumbs up for me. Leave a comment below. And, go Browns. Looking forward to watching Thursday night. And great conversation today between Mike, my dad, my father, and myself, the three of us. And please, we'd love to hear your feedback on that. And what are some things that maybe helped you with the topic as well, with temptation and just all the things out there that we talked about. And so, yeah, go Browns, and make sure you like, subscribe, and share all that good stuff. I'll see you guys in the next one. I'm out of here. Gone.